In the apocalypse, I struggled to survive. Little did I know that the zombie king, after eating a love-struck brain, hopelessly fell in love with me. Every day when I opened the door, he would affectionately present fresh food. Until he read a book titled The Rogue Merchant's Code. The food now came with a price tag: one ham sausage for a hug, a bag of bread for a kiss. Nervously, I asked, "What about hot pot?" The zombie king chuckled and gestured towards me. "That one's a bit more expensive. Come closer, and I'll tell you slowly." On the 12th day of the zombie outbreak, communications failed, water and electricity were cut off, and the city fell into stagnation. I sighed heavily at the bare green rat tail in front of me. Everything edible or inedible at home had been consumed. It was only a matter of time before we ran out of food. If you can't beat them, join them. My eyes suddenly filled with determination. I boldly took the peephole off the door and extended my finger. "Dear zombies, please go easy on the biting." I was like an old man fishing. After waiting anxiously for 2 hours, the bait remained intact. I was furious. I yanked open the door and shouted outside, "What are you all waiting for? Come bite me!" The only response I received was silence. What's going on? Are the zombies gone? Bravely, I stepped outside. As I turned around, I came face to face with a handsome pale-faced zombie behind the door. That handsome zombie looked at me straight in the eye, a strange smile on his lips. As if he had been waiting for this moment when I stepped out of the house. "Can you bite gently? I'm quite afraid of pain." The zombie's smile remained unchanged. Just as I was about to offer my arm, someone pushed me aside. "Hello, can I go first? My boyfriend mutated, and I need to be with him quickly." I was shocked. This thing could be fought over? Looking closer, it was her, so it wasn't surprising. My neighbor across the hall, who attempted suicide 3 times a month for love, causing chaos in the neighborhood, truly deserved the title of a love-stricken brain. "All right, you go first." I stepped back. I watched in horror as the girl rushed towards the zombie. She was then bitten, her head shattered, blood splattering everywhere. Is everyone dead? Can they still turn into zombies? The following scenes, whenever I recalled, were not something I wanted to remember. It turns out that Plants vs. Zombies is a documentary. This loss will indeed eat up your brain. I wanted to run, but my feet felt like they were nailed to the ground. The handsome zombie licked the blood off his lips and left the mutilated body of the girl behind, his gaze now coldly turning towards me. Trembling in fear, I stammered, I suddenly remembered I had something going on at home. Maybe next time." He stepped towards me. I'll make sure to eat more walnuts to boost my brain before I come find you again, okay?" He kept walking. "Fine, make it quick, don't let me suffer too much." Not turning into a zombie, he was about to turn into a dead zombie. I closed my eyes in resignation. But the expected pain did not come. When I opened my eyes, the zombie stood in front of me, looking somewhat strange. His grayish eyes scanned me from head to toe, a faint blush appearing on his pale face. I was puzzled. "Did you eat too much just now?" The zombie remained silent, the blush on his face deepening, his gaze becoming evasive, glancing around, unwilling to look at me directly. "What's going on? Did that girl's brain have some toxin?" At that moment, I knew I had to run. My feet refused to budge as the zombie approached me, grabbing my wrist. I yelled in panic, "What are you going to do?" But the words got stuck in my throat. I looked down to see 2 strong arms encircling my waist as the zombie buried his face in my neck, his icy touch making my hair stand on end. And then it got even worse. I felt something wet and soft sliding along my skin, as if probing which part was easier to bite, then with sharp teeth, piercing my skin to turn me into his kind. Though this was my ultimate goal for going out today, when the moment actually arrived, I panicked. I was about to become this half-dead creature without ever experiencing love. "Move your foul mouth away, you disgust me." I cried and cursed, and even the initiator was taken aback. He circled in front of me, awkwardly wiping away my tears, his face filled with concern and confusion. His lips moved, finally letting out a few muffled words. "Don't cry." He could speak? For words came to mind. Humanity is doomed. Back home, I leaned against the door and sighed heavily. Just a moment ago, the handsome zombie wiped my tears. And suddenly a muscular zombie lunged out from behind me, swiftly approaching. Just as I was about to be shot, the handsome zombie raised his arm to block the gaping mouth, the sound of teeth-piercing flesh sending chills down my spine. Soon, the two were entangled in a fight. The inhuman speed, the deadly moves, how terrifying it all was. Though I didn't understand why the handsome zombie saved me, it was a rare opportunity. I quickly scrambled back into the house. My most defining trait is my courage, and I soon fell asleep on the bed. I slept soundly, even dreaming of someone I hadn't seen in ages. The face of that person slowly merged with the handsome zombie's, becoming identical. But upon waking up, I struggled to remember the dream. My memory seemed to be getting worse day by day. The room was now pitch black. I pressed my aching stomach. I was really hungry, craving for a hot pot. Just as the thought crossed my mind, a faint knocking sound came at the door, pitifully soft. I cautiously picked up a baseball bat leaning against the wall. "Who's there?" The person outside didn't speak, but pushed something through the damaged peephole. Upon closer inspection, I was amazed. A ham sausage. Rescue had finally arrived. Excitedly, I opened the door and hugged the person standing there. "You've finally come." The person stiffened for a moment, a faint smell of blood lingering. Only then did I realize something was amiss. Slowly lifting my head, I saw him. The handsome zombie smiling with a wound on his lips, affectionately handing me a pile of food. "Eat." I hesitated for a brief moment before greedily devouring the food. There was no choice, I was just too hungry. But when I looked up again, the handsome zombie was nowhere to be found. I quickly shut the door, fearing another muscular zombie might appear out of nowhere. I made my way back to the bedroom in the darkness. Just as I was about to lie down, I caught a glimpse of something moving. Who's there? Every hair on my body stood on end. Other than me, there was someone else in the room. He sat on the balcony railing, facing away from the moonlight, his face hidden. "Do you have food?" Instinctively, I hid the unfinished bread behind my back. No, it had rained the night before, and I had collected rainwater. I forgot to lock the balcony door with an iron chain, giving the man an opportunity. He stood up and slowly walked towards me. It was then that I noticed the bloodstains around his mouth and collar. I could sense that the blood didn't come from an animal or a zombie. He had consumed a human being. No wonder I had been hearing sounds of chopping meat and chewing coming from the upstairs these days. Surely, my poor neighbor had already become a meal for this strange man. Bring out what you have. I shuddered, immediately offering the bread with both hands. "Is this all you have?" The tall, muscular man seemed dissatisfied with the half piece of bread. "It's all there is, please don't kill me." The man sneered, "Not kill you? But this is clearly not enough for me to eat." In a lawless world, only the cruelty of human nature remained. I watched as the man took out a dagger from his pocket, its sharp glint shining in the moonlight. He wasn't here for the bread. From the beginning, he intended to kill me and then devour me. I never expected that after the zombie gifted me food to fill my stomach, a human like me would be the one to put me in grave danger. It was truly chilling. "Close your eyes, it will be over quickly, and it won't hurt." I stiffened as I weakly pulled a smile. "Thank you. But I will say the same to you." The next moment, the man was suddenly tackled to the ground by a force from behind. Standing there was the handsome zombie, who had returned once more. Just as I suspected. I had seen the handsome zombie climb up my balcony through the drainpipe a moment ago, giving me an eerie sense of security. I was saved, but things weren't that simple. The man was skilled, ruthless, and cunning in his technique. The handsome zombie, likely injured from the daytime battle with the muscular zombie, was now sluggish and somewhat hesitant. Gradually, he found himself at a disadvantage in the fight. Even more terrifying, the man's eye color and skin tone began to change. It was a sign of mutation, suggesting he would lose his sense of pain, and his strength and agility would increase. If he was so formidable as a human, the thought of what he would become as a zombie was unimaginable. Run. The handsome zombie struggled to tell me in the midst of the fight. He had been pushed to the balcony edge along with me by the man, his upper body hanging in midair. I did want to run, but my feet felt like they were nailed to the ground. Would the handsome zombie be killed? If I escaped, he surely would be. At that thought, I discreetly picked up the dagger the man had dropped. Moving swiftly, I rushed behind him, aiming for his heart with all my might. But the blade failed to pierce through. Turns out the man was wearing a stab-proof vest under his clothes. Cursing, he exclaimed, "How dare you ambush me?" The man's eye turned even grayer with rage. He grabbed me by the collar, pulling me in front of him, our bodies dangling side by side on the railing. I turned my head, a smile uglier than crying on my face. "Sorry, I couldn't save you. Let's die together, and I'll treat you to a meal in hell." The handsome zombie half closed his eyes, looking so weak as if he could collapse at any moment. "Kiss me," his barely audible voice drilled into my ears in the silent night, almost making me think it was a hallucination. "What?" "Kiss me, now." The man hadn't completely turned into a zombie yet, his brain hadn't completely turned into a decoration. Upon hearing this, he chuckled, "Even at death's door, you still want to show affection? Have you already included me in your play? Kiss? Go to hell." With that, he released his hand from the grip around the handsome zombie's neck and pushed him away forcefully. I watched in horror as the handsome zombie uncontrollably fell backwards, so tense that I even forgot to breathe. My home is on the 8th floor. If he falls down, won't he end up like a smashed prune? At the critical moment, I gritted my teeth. I grabbed the back of the handsome zombie's head, bringing our heads together. Lips touching for a moment, I clearly saw the handsome zombie's eyes widen suddenly, his gray eyes lighting up several degrees. It was as if he had been fully charged, and then, the man was struck down. The handsome zombie swiftly hooked onto the railing with both hands, maintaining a hanging position. Legs around the man's head, and with a swift move, he knocked the nearly 200-pound body to the ground. He then pushed me into the bedroom, without turning back, and said, "Don't look." He then closed the balcony door, cutting off the sounds of teeth tearing, bones shattering, and the man's scream. "Stop facing the zombie who saved my life twice. I was truly grateful. How should I address you?" The handsome zombie still hadn't fully recovered from the kiss just now. He glanced at me, then quickly looked away, his face turning as red as a tomato. "Can't remember." "Then, I'll just call you Jack, okay?" He nodded. He took out several boxes from his pocket and placed them in front of me, all medications, looking as if they were just taken off the shelf. I looked at Jack with confusion. He explained, "Blood on you, wounded, take medicine." Blood? He couldn't be talking about menstruation, could he? So, after he gave me food and left, thinking I was injured, he went to find medicine for me. Was he being cautious during the fight with the man before, afraid of damaging the medicine in his pocket? After realizing all this, I slumped. I lay down on the sofa listlessly with a deadpan expression. Compared to the lively real zombie across from me, I seemed more like a zombie. Why would he do this? I don't think there are any good zombies among the undead, especially since Jack had just ruthlessly crushed a girl's skull in front of me. He must have his own motives. Is he using me as a backup ration, getting me fat before devouring me? The more I thought about it, the more panicked I became, beads of cold sweat quickly forming on my back. Then I heard Jack say, "Because you are my love." My eyes widened suddenly. Oh my God, being declared a zombie's lover, it's better to just kill me. I apologized for my recklessness. It was indeed not good to be considered a lover by a zombie. But if he is a zombie king, then it's a different story. Yes, Jack is that one in a million zombie king. His scent and blood naturally have an intimidating power over other zombies. One look can make them kneel in surrender. Of course, there are always a few stubborn ones, like muscle zombies. And most importantly, he has intelligence and thoughts. Though not very high. On the 18th day of the zombie outbreak, as usual, I opened the bedroom door upon waking up. I immediately received food from outside, perhaps from humans or zombies, handed in. Thank you. I took a bite of the bread. It was a meat floss flavor that I liked. Jack had a faint smile on his lips. The sunlight shone through the window, making his skin almost translucent. No need to thank me. He has been speaking more fluently lately, and his logic has become clearer. Every day, he would bring back fresh food, daily necessities, and some strange little things from outside. For instance, yesterday, he mysteriously slipped a handful of gold and diamonds into my pocket. I was at a loss. What are you bringing these back for? Jack shyly smiles, shiny, pretty, for you. I looked at the young zombie in front of me, moved by his actions after being touched by the love brain. These days, I have come to realize Jack's abnormality. The problem must lie with that girl. She must be a top-tier love brain. The power is so great that even zombies can't resist it. After being infected by the love brain, Jack saw me as his beloved when he first gained consciousness. These days, I have been teaching him to read and write, trying to use words to cultivate him, to awaken the humanity deep within. At first, Jack was unwilling. He didn't like books, he even tore a few. So I had to play my ace. Not learning? Alright, then no hugs, stay 2 meters away from me every day. Jack became obedient. It's probably the influence of the love brain. If he doesn't have intimate contact with his beloved, that's me, for an extended period, he becomes restless, agitated, even weak. Seeing the zombie diligently studying at the table, I smiled inwardly. Jack, in practice, had proven what genius means. He had already mastered all the books at home. So yesterday, I had Jack go to the bookstore and pick up a few books. Who would have thought that after he went there, he set his eyes on a book called The Swindler's Code? And then, he secretly brought it back and finished reading the whole book while I was sleeping. This led to the following conversation: what about dinner? I pushed open the bedroom door, asking the zombie sitting empty-handed on the sofa. With a casual air, Jack raised a finger, a piece of ham sausage, a hug, a bag of bread, a kiss that I swallowed nervously. What about hot pot? The effect of reading was quite significant. Jack now, apart from his appearance, behaved just like a normal human, and he seemed quite intelligent. At my words, he smirked mischievously, motioning me to come closer with a finger. It's a bit pricey, come here, and I'll tell you slowly. I stayed silent for a moment. Then, I suddenly closed the bedroom door, making sure to lock it. 1 day later, after the bedroom door had been knocked on repeatedly, I woke up to the love brain's zombie outside, desperately pleading, "Kathy, it's unbearable that you're starving. I promise I won't do it again, come out and eat." It wasn't until Jack had become hoarse from calling out that I got out of bed, once again feeling a sense of triumph. The days trudged on, passing by uneventfully. In the blink of an eye, it had been a month since the zombie outbreak. Perhaps the Earth also knew that humanity was enduring a disaster, as it continuously turned the weather gloomy, casting a dull, gray shadow over everything. The streets were littered with human limbs, cars wrecked beyond recognition, and shops looted empty. It was a scene far more brutal than in zombie movies. The city seemed to have descended into a dead zone. If it weren't for Jack, I feared I would have long turned cold. Speaking of Jack, I suddenly remembered some strange occurrences recently. Jack had been spending longer and longer time outside gathering food, and often, by midday, I couldn't see his shadow anywhere. The food he brought back had significantly decreased. Sometimes, there was only a piece of bread, other times just a bottle of water. Sometimes, he came back empty-handed, bearing various sizes of injuries. While tending to his wounds, I had casually asked how he got hurt. But Jack seemed unwilling to let me know the reason, always being evasive, even citing reasons like being attacked by crazy zombies. But, he's a zombie king, how could he be attacked by zombies? Nevertheless, I didn't press further for answers. When he couldn't hide it anymore, he would speak. Endlessly questioning was useless. Indeed, until one evening. Jack had disappeared for an entire day, then pushed open the bedroom door and appeared in front of me. With a shocked expression on my face, he fell to his knees, his arm wounds visible down to the bone. He no longer hid the truth, weakly confessing, "I'm sorry, Kathy, I can't find food for you anymore." 4 days ago, the human rescue team arrived in the city. I was stunned. A surge of joy couldn't help but well up within me. The human rescue team was the disaster finally coming to an end, but before I could fully embrace this moment, I heard Jack continue, "At the same time, they are also clearing out the zombies." I was frozen in place. Jack, too, was a zombie. So, Jack's wounds were incurred while seeking food for me, assaulted by humans. His prolonged outings were to evade human pursuers. His diminishing returns in food were due to his attempts to hide from humans. Sometimes returning empty-handed, bringing back only injuries of varying sizes. Helping him bandage his wounds, he hesitantly revealed the truth, "I'm sorry, Kathy, I can't find food for you anymore." 4 days ago, the human rescue team arrived in the city. As I bandaged Jack's wounds, he chatted away, his mouth never ceasing. Lifting my gaze, I sketched Jack's profile with my eyes, sharp angles, delicate features, enough to glimpse his former vigor. I couldn't help but feel a sense of nostalgia. Time had flown by so quickly. When I first saw Jack last month, he was a vicious and brutal zombie with low intelligence, speaking one word at a time. Who would have thought that now he would say different love words to me every day? Where are you going? I asked calmly. Jack did not mention leaving in his words, but every sentence conveyed a sense of departure. But where could he go? Humans do not have zombie shelters. Once he is discovered, he would face a rain of bullets. Jack's eyes dimmed. In the book, it says that humans and zombies are on separate paths. My existence is a threat to you, so I plan to. I finished his unfinished sentence. Intend to be cleaned proactively, is that right? Jack nodded hesitantly. I smiled, not saying anything. After bandaging his wounds, I sat on the sofa, bowing my head in thought. Suddenly, a shadow loomed in front of me. Jack stood in front of me, squatting down slowly, holding my face in his hands. I met his sincere gaze and froze. I watched him lean in, and his lips touched mine softly and coolly. As our breaths intertwined, tears fell silently, letting me taste a hint of bitterness. Goodbye, he said. As the zombie's figure was about to disappear at the doorway, I shouted, zombies do need to be cleaned up. But you are human, not a zombie. Are you also going to be cleaned up? Jack's steps faltered, turned back, his face filled with astonishment. I stared into his eyes and repeated firmly, you are human, not a zombie. If it weren't for Jack, I would have died of starvation long ago. Am I supposed to watch you die now? I couldn't do it. Besides, I wasn't wrong. Jack, indeed, is a human. As far as I know, the current zombie virus has evolved, and once infected, it is a certain death. Then the human body will be invaded and dominated by the zombie virus. But the reason why the zombie king can become the zombie king must have his remarkable abilities. Jack didn't die. Not only did he have thoughts and speak, but he also had a faint breath and heartbeat. He was more inclined towards a zombie in his original attributes, with dull thinking and viciousness. It was that girl's love that awakened his humanity. Later, after being with me, it stimulated his humanity thoroughly. So now, all I need to do is to completely turn him into a human. A person that no one can detect any clues about. Looking at the man in the mirror with dark pupils and rosy skin, Jack looked away uneasily. Kathy, this is so strange. I adjusted his face to face the mirror again. Not strange, this is how you originally looked like. Perhaps it was his first time wearing contact lenses. Jack was a bit uncomfortable and reflexively wanted to rub his eyes. I stopped him. Don't rub your eyes. From now on, you have to wear it every day during the daytime, until the rescue team arrives, and you can bluff your way through. Jack listened to me obediently, put his hand down. After cleaning up the foundation and blush on the table, I suddenly remembered an important question. Are you really unable to remember your previous name? Jack frowned and thought for a moment, then said a word, White. I couldn't help but smile and shake my head. White is my last name. Oh well, then you can also use the White last name with me. Since he is surnamed White, let's call him Jack White. Jack's eyes lit up, seeming very satisfied with his name. I forced a smile and didn't say anything. When I blurted out Jack White just now, it felt so natural, as if I had said it 1,000 times before. At the same time, my head also throbbed with pain, as if something was trying to come out, but I couldn't recall it, making me so uncomfortable that I wanted to hit the wall. But it probably wasn't important anyway. When the door was knocked on, my heart and Jack's heart tightened at the same time. Today is the 8th day of the rescue team's entry into the city. Looking out the window at the street, the wandering zombies had disappeared. Instead, there was a fire burning in the suburbs for a whole day and night, with the smell of rotting flesh and burnt stench in the air. Before I went to open the door, I turned to the man sitting on the sofa, repeatedly psyching himself up, and said, Remember your promise to me. If you dare to harm a human being, I will make you pay for it. For a love-brained person, this threat is undoubtedly the most intimidating one. Jack shook his head quickly, earnestly promising, I will never. I am human, I will not harm my kind. I nodded with satisfaction. Then I took a deep breath and opened the door. You finally came, my acting performance replayed. I hugged the newcomer, tears flowing with excitement. I portrayed an image of a person who had suffered in distress, endured hardships, and finally waited for redemption. The rescue personnel paused for a while, then patted my back reassuringly. Don't be afraid, the disaster is over. Is the person next to you your boyfriend? Pack up your things and come with us to a safe place. The rescue team selected the rescue center in a sturdy high-rise building. All survivors were inside. As I stepped in and saw the scene inside, my spirit was profoundly shaken. Compared to the faces of other survivors who looked like they had been through a disaster, Jack and I seemed like we had just returned from vacation. As expected, as soon as Jack and I appeared, hundreds of eyes turned towards us, full of scrutiny and curiosity. Next, a middle-aged man with a dignified posture walked towards us from a distance, probably the leader of the rescue team. With an eagle-eyed glance at Jack, the officer asked, "Are you a survivor too?" My heart tightened, and cold sweat instantly broke out on my forehead. Could we have been exposed so quickly? Jack remained calmer compared to me. He met the sharp gaze of the officer and nodded calmly, "Yes." The captain fell silent. But a few seconds later, he suddenly burst into laughter, clapping Jack's shoulder heartily. "Young man, even at this time, you still have the mood to put on makeup. Your mental toughness is extraordinary." I secretly sneered in my heart, not putting on makeup afraid of scaring you. The captain did not suspect anything and kindly asked us to rest, saying that dinner would be served soon. Jack and I found a random spot to sit. As we sat down, we exchanged a knowing glance and burst into laughter simultaneously. It was a false alarm, and the feeling was great. Soon, the rescue team distributed meals to each of us. Jack and I had been starving for 2 days, so we ate like the rest of the survivors, as if we were starving wolves. But halfway through the meal, I suddenly felt a burning gaze next to me, staring straight at us without looking away. It was a girl around 7 or 8 years old. Wasn't she always hungry? I thought to myself, why isn't she eating quickly? Why is she staring at us? Her father noticed her strange behavior and tapped on her food bowl, scolding her, "What are you looking at? Eat quickly." The little girl regained her senses, pointed at Jack, and said to her father, "Daddy, I've seen this brother before." A bad feeling suddenly rose in my heart. The next moment, the girl continued, "He is a zombie." It turns out that the little girl's family owned a convenience store, not far from my building downstairs. When Jack went to find food for me, he had been to her house a few times, and coincidentally, each time, the girl who was taking shelter in the attic saw him through the gaps in the floor. Hence, today's scene. As soon as these words were said, the swallowing and chewing sounds around us instantly stopped. And everyone turned their eyes towards Jack. For these survivors who had survived a calamity, the mention of zombies was a taboo. A string was always taut in my mind, and as long as this word was slightly touched, it would resonate enormously. A zombie? That girl said he is a zombie. A zombie has infiltrated the shelter? Run, run. The survivors around started to panic, and even the rescue teams who were unaware of the situation also followed suit. In just a few tens of seconds, chaos ensued on this floor. Even the rescue team came with guns after hearing the news. Jack was standing still, not knowing how to react, staring at me with his pitch-black eyes, filled with confusion. Kathy. I took a deep breath, giving him a comforting look as if to say, "I am here for you." Then I stood up abruptly and screamed, "Enough." The surroundings fell silent instantly. Ignoring the terrified expressions of others, I said resolutely, "The zombie she saw before was my partner's twin brother. He was bitten and mutated by a group of zombies in front of my partner, losing his humanity in front of my partner. He's now ashes in the fire outside the city." Saying this, I cried in sorrow, covering my face and weeping. This is the eternal pain in my partner's heart. Many people present had witnessed scenes where their loved ones and friends were attacked by zombies. Seeing this, they couldn't help but shed tears themselves. But some rational survivors still had doubts. Someone shouted from afar, "We'll only believe what she says? You say he is not a zombie, prove it to us then. Prove it?" I smiled silently while covering my face. Then I put my hand down and turned to the man who spoke. "Prove it?" "Sure. Have you ever seen a zombie who can recite Shakespeare's sonnets, 'Knowledge changes fate'?" Since Jack recited a long segment of Sonnet 18 in front of everyone, his suspicion of being a zombie was completely cleared. After all, who would have thought a zombie's knowledge base could be so extensive? This city is a major disaster area of the zombie virus. With a population of nearly 10 million, less than 5% of survivors remain. So until the zombies are completely cleared out, Jack and I stayed at the shelter. Rescuers heard that we were lovers and specially allocated a single room for us. Perhaps because the people living in this building were too densely packed, Jack felt very insecure and his state of mind was always downcast. But even so, he never had any tendency to harm others. He just became more clingy than usual. He liked to hug me privately. His arms firmly locked me in his embrace, just quietly holding each other, with no other actions, very pure. And I never refused Jack's hug. Because he only has me. I always feel like I've known you for a long, long time. In the arms of the corpse, I suddenly spoke out. Jack's head was resting on my shoulder, looking listless. A slight, embarrassed smile appeared at his mouth at my words. I also have that kind of feeling. I tooted in confusion. Why? Why is there such a familiar feeling? On the 57th day of the outbreak of the zombie virus, humanity finally ushered in the dawn of victory. The virus had been brought under control. The restless days were about to pass. But it cannot be denied that, in the country and even the entire Earth, this was a disaster that could be inscribed in history. Countless people were no longer living, countless people were displaced. For the next few decades or even hundreds of years, the shadow of this disaster would not dissipate from people's hearts. In a few days, we could leave the shelter. Today, the rescue team said that they had invited an expert from abroad to give us a popular science lecture on the zombie virus. This foreign expert was called John. He had a high reputation worldwide. 2 months ago, when the zombie virus had not yet erupted, he had sensitively sensed the danger and quickly alerted his own country. It was precisely because of this that his country could almost emerge unscathed from this disaster. Wherever he went, he was respected and revered by humans. The makeshift lecture hall was packed with people. Jack and I sat in the back row. I listened attentively, and he leaned on my shoulder and dozed off. I nudged his head, and in a volume only we could hear, I said, "Wake up, you should listen too. What if we find a way to turn you back into a regular human being?" Yes, I always believed that Jack would one day turn back into a regular person. Although he looked no different from a regular person now, he couldn't wear colored contact lenses and foundation for the rest of his life, could he? Jack obediently sat up straight, blinked his sleepy eyes, and turned his gaze to the stage. However, when he saw John's face clearly, his expression suddenly changed. He began to tremble uncontrollably. I could even hear his teeth chattering from fear. "What's wrong with you?" I was getting anxious. "Kathy, take me away, quickly take me away." He grabbed my hand tightly. I suddenly realized the seriousness of the situation. I was flustered for a moment, then calmed down. I held Jack's hand back and reassured him, "Okay, I'll take you out." I walked resolutely to the exit, noticing that people around us glanced at us, then casually looked away. We made it to the door without any problems. However, just as we were about to step out of the lecture hall, the captain stopped us. He had a strong impression of Jack, and he asked me with concern, "What's wrong with him?" Jack had not yet recovered from his shock. His sweat was streaming down, his breathing was rapid, he kept his head down and dared not look anyone in the eye. I blurted out, "My loved one is having an asthma attack. I don't have the medicine with me. I'm taking him out." The captain raised his voice to interrupt me. "Asthma? Oh, that's not something to joke about. Luckily, John is here today. He is very knowledgeable about this." Both Jack and I widened our eyes, and Jack became even more nervous, forgetting to even breathe. "Wait a minute." My attempt to stop them was one step too late, as the captain waved towards a distant spot, saying, "Dr. John, we have an asthma patient here who needs your help." What happened next turned out to be a nightmare for me for many years to come. Jack was taken away in front of me. After the captain shouted, John came down from the stage. Upon seeing Jack, he was initially taken aback, then couldn't help but let out a chuckle. He said in a messianic manner, "Captain, you let a zombie into the shelter. That's quite a slip-up." His voice was not low. Everyone in the room heard it clearly. The air became so silent that you could hear a pin drop. "You're talking nonsense. Who's a zombie?" I retorted, trying to keep calm. John turned his gaze to me, looking surprised. "You remembered?" "Remember what?" I stood in front of Jack, staring at John warily. His skeptical gaze lingered on my face for a while, then he shook his head with a smile. "Nothing. Your loved one is a zombie. You probably don't know, right? Step aside, otherwise he will hurt you. Be obedient, hand him over to us." I repeated firmly, "He's not a zombie." There was always a voice in my heart saying, I must not hand Jack over to him, absolutely must not. And at that moment, Jack was staring at John, gritting his teeth, his eyes bloodshot, suppressing a surge of murderous intent. Sweat was pouring down his forehead, smudging the makeup, revealing a strange pale complexion. John noticed it keenly, his smile even broader. He whispered something to the captain. After the captain listened, he looked at Jack, his eyes widening in astonishment. And then, Jack was taken away. The captain explained that Jack was the only person infected with the zombie virus who did not die. Dr. John kindly did not allow people to eliminate Jack, but instead took him back to try to find a way to turn him back into a regular human being. This action elevated his image in the eyes of the public once again. Many countries made statues of him, placed them in the Hall of Great Men, and hailed him as the savior of humanity. As for me at that time, I was confronting John at his established experimental base in the country. Are you rescuing him or torturing him? I grabbed John by the collar like a mad person and roared. In the laboratory next to us, through the glass windows, I could clearly see a withered zombie lying there. His hands and feet were not bound. But even so, he had no will to resist or escape. In just a few days, John tortured Jack to the point where he was just skin and bones. Jack lay weakly there, his half-closed gray eyes staring blankly at the ceiling, making it difficult to judge if he was still alive. As I looked at that figure, my heart felt like it was being twisted by a knife, tears falling uncontrollably. Jack. John pushed me away, straightened his collar, and said casually, "He's a zombie, so what if he's dead?" Yet when he brought Jack back, he clearly said he was looking for a cure for him. My heart was breaking. He is human. He's human. No, he's a zombie. He's the first zombie born in the world. I was stunned. How do you know? I had a ridiculous guess in my heart. At the same time, my head began to ache, as if being gnawed by tens of thousands of ants, making me unbearable. John looked at me as if I were a struggling stray dog on the side of the road. You don't need to know the truth. I can't turn him back into a human. You take him away. Supporting Jack, we fled quickly, afraid of being caught. But just as we stepped out of the experimental base, we heard alarm bells ringing. John yelled from behind, "That woman has secretly taken away a zombie. Kill her, otherwise the zombie virus will return." I gritted my teeth. Indeed, he had no intention of letting Jack and me return alive. The experimental base was built on a mountainside. I took Jack and hid in the woods. He was so thin that his bones felt sharp, and his breath was barely there. He kept his head down, unresponsive from start to finish. At that moment, I hated my own incompetence. He protected me so thoroughly in the apocalypse, and now I couldn't protect him. Jack, hold on, I'll take you back. I stumbled, cried, and spoke. Don't cry. The zombie, in a coma, heard my crying and instinctively mumbled two indistinct sounds. It was like the scene when we first met. I cried even harder. The footsteps behind me caught up, and the voices of the security personnel clearly reached my ears. We can't let the zombie escape. Shoot. What if we hit that woman? She's harming people. She's a criminal. Let her die. Shoot. Kathy, leave me. No. Using the trees as cover, I continued to run frantically. Kathy, have you also fallen in love with me? Yes. So we still have a long and good life to live together. No one should die here. Jack weakly curled his lips, saying breathlessly, "Unfortunately, people and zombies are ultimately on different paths. Forget me." With that, before I could react, Jack used the last bit of strength to push me down. After a few gunshots, everything fell into silence. For a few seconds, my mind went blank, then I covered Jack's back and touched a hot blood hole. Fresh blood gushed out, wetting my palms. Jack. I cried his name. In the face of my lover's imminent death, countless images crazily flooded into my mind, and I remembered everything. I will protect you from now on. We grew up in the same orphanage, and the headmaster named me Jack. I chose the same major as you, and you couldn't shake me off. Kathy, I like you, be my girlfriend. John, I am your experiment, don't kill my lover, I beg you. It turns out, Jack and I had actually known each other a long time ago. It really was fate. In the seemingly all-consuming darkness, I was overwhelmed with grief, not noticing that the person in my arms was fading along with the loss of blood, shutting off that layer of pale blue beneath the skin. Today is the 89th day of eradicating the zombie virus. I pushed open the door to the ward as usual. I placed the lilies in the vase and then cleaned the body of the person lying in the hospital bed. A month ago, John's conspiracy was exposed. He thought that both Jack and I would die, so he said a lot of things he shouldn't have at the experimental base. But he didn't know I was recording it. He also didn't know that before going to the base, I called the captain, asking him to save Jack and me in case of emergency. Anything, once done, will leave some traces. John is truly a devil, using countless innocent lives as stepping stones to achieve his eternal glory. Initially respected, now equally despised. But I don't want to care about all of this. I only care about one thing. When will you wake up, Jack? The man lay quietly there, eyes closed, a natural curve at the corners of his mouth, looking as if asleep, peaceful and serene. It wasn't until I regained my memory that I understood. Jack didn't just happen to show up at my doorstep before. He escaped from John's company when the zombie virus broke out. Following his instincts, he came to my house and stood guard at the door. And it wasn't a girl's love brain that awakened his humanity, but me. What a fool. I chattered away as I wiped his arms. Wake up soon, I miss you. Although I said I wouldn't bother with you in this life or the next, but if you wake up now, I can take back that statement. Cooking is so difficult, I've been learning for a week and still can't do it. Wake up earlier and cook for me, okay? As the sun went down, the man still didn't react. I straightened my sore back and decided to come see him again tomorrow. Picking up my bag to leave, just before stepping out of the ward, a faint male voice came from behind, barely audible, asking, "Who?" I turned back in shock, meeting a pair of pitch-black pupils. He stubbornly repeated, with an unfamiliar hoarseness in his voice, "Who bullied you?" "I'll help you, beat him up." I smiled broadly, tears streaming down my face. Even in the apocalypse, his love would be the last undying phoenix. I am Jack. Kathy is my lover. We have known each other since we were very young, as we grew up in the same orphanage. I remember the first time I saw her, she was being bullied. Surrounded by a group of older kids, she looked even more frail. Perhaps every boy has a hero dream in their childhood. When I saw the injustice, I grabbed a stick and drove them away. Helping the girl up, I gallantly said to her, "I will protect you from now on." I kept my word. From kindergarten to adulthood, I always shielded her, never letting her suffer any harm. After the college entrance exam, Kathy and I were both admitted to the same prestigious university, and we both chose a major in biological science. After graduating, we confirmed our romantic relationship and then entered the same biotechnology company. The business of our company mainly involves developing vaccines, reagents, and drugs. Even though they are all life-saving products, Kathy and I always felt something was off, but couldn't quite put our finger on it. Until one day, before leaving work, Kathy looked panic-stricken as she told me she accidentally discovered the company's secret. As it turned out, this foreign-owned enterprise, on the surface, was making drugs, but secretly working on developing the zombie virus. The countries where these viruses would be released were not hard to guess. While it hadn't been completed yet, I decided to secure the evidence, then report it and stop this catastrophic conspiracy. But as per the usual course of fate, we were caught stealing the evidence. Dr. John stood before me, holding a syringe, no longer the kind person he used to be. "So you found out. But it doesn't matter. Both of you are orphans, and even if you disappear from this world, no one will notice. I happen to need a virus test subject. Pick between you and your lover." I lay on the iron bed frame, my limbs bound. Upon hearing this, I turned to look at Kathy, also bound. My love was in tears, saying, "Jack, if you dare to choose yourself, I will never speak to you again in this life or the next." I smiled, feeling a sourness in my eyes. But I didn't want to shed tears in front of her. But what should I do? I promised to protect her. Under her frightened gaze, I turned without hesitation to John and said, "John, I am your experiment, but don't kill my lover. I beg you." As Kathy's despairing cries echoed in the lab, "She will forget my plot after the shock treatment, and she will forget you." By the time John told me that, the needle had pierced the skin of my arm, and the icy liquid slowly entered my bloodstream. Forget me? Then what about me? Will I forget her? John shrugged indifferently. Of course. Do you think love can overcome the zombie virus? It will erase your humanity, leaving only instinct. Instinctively biting humans, instinctively gnawing raw flesh, instinctively destroying everything. Consciousness was starting to blur. Uncontrollably, images of Kathy's expressions and the way she called my name flickered before my eyes. Jack, how did you manage to apply to the same school as me again? Jack, how can I eat this much? Jack, I agreed to be your girlfriend. John was wrong. Loving her was my true instinct. The next moment, I closed my eyes in a sea of chaos. After Kathy regained her memory, one day she jokingly told Jack about her earlier misunderstanding. I initially thought you had taken a love brain pill to protect me. Jack froze in his cooking motion, furrowing his eyebrows. Love brain? Why would I need to take that? I've always been a love brain, haven't I? Kathy burst into laughter. Indeed, John was wrong. The place she stood was the home he longed for the most. Rest.